So there was one point in your life, and up to this very moment, where you've really considered that you want to become a physician. You truly believe that your experiences and all your stories have led you to this very moment to make this noble decision into serving others. Well, without a doubt, you cannot get your medical degree without first attending medical school. 4 grueling years of hard work and perseverance. Hey everybody, my name is Mark Velasquez, and I'm a recent graduate from the University of North Texas. And today, we're going to be joined by a special guest who will be telling us a lot about how to get into medical school. This someone you may all know is Josh Korzan, and he'll be attending medical school this upcoming fall, and he just wanted to give you all a few tips on how to get in and what you should know going in before applying to medical school. Go ahead and like this video, comment down below if you have any questions or if anything stood out to you, and go ahead and subscribe to Josh's channel. He's willing to share a lot more information about medical school and bring you along on his journey. So without further ado, let's go ahead and go into Josh's top 10 tips in how to get into medical school.
Hey everyone, my name is Josh Korzan, and I'm an incoming first-year medical student at Rush Medical College in Chicago, and today I'm talking about my top 10 tips on how to get into medical school. Tip number 1 is to get more clinical experience, and this is the biggest one in my mind for 2 reasons. Number 1, getting clinical experience tells med schools that you've done your due diligence and that you actually have some idea of what you're getting yourself into. You could have a perfect MCAT and GPA, but without adequate clinical experience, you're unlikely to be accepted. And then number 2, even bigger in my mind, is that these experiences will tell you if being a doctor is something you actually want to do. And if you start and then somewhere down the road you decide that it's not right for you, that's totally fine too. Tip number 2 is that you do need a strong GPA and MCAT. This one's pretty straightforward, but unfortunately there's really no way around it. Medical schools need to know that you have the cognitive capabilities to succeed in medical training. And although you certainly can get in with less than perfect scores, there is a certain threshold under which you're unlikely to recover from, regardless of how strong the rest of your application is. All else being equal, higher scores are better. Tip number 3 is that GPA and MCAT do matter, but now I'm going to play devil's advocate on myself because I feel like a lot of people get this wrong. Of course, GPA and MCAT are 2 major components of the application, and in general, higher scores are better. However, keep in mind that these are just 2 components of the application. There's a lot that goes into this. A lot of people hyper-focus on just these 2 things, but even with perfect scores, a poorly written application and/or inadequate clinical experiences could still kill your chances of being accepted. Tip number 4 is to tell your story. The personal statement is one of your best opportunities to stand out as a strong applicant. Applying to med school is a major life decision, and it's undoubtedly been a journey to get to this point, so tell the story of what brought you here. This will not only allow medical schools to get to know you better as an applicant, but after reading your personal statement, they should have an answer to their biggest question, which is, why does this person want to be a physician? Tip number 5 is to frame your application appropriately. The way that you frame your application has a dramatic impact on its quality. And the biggest thing here is it's not a resume, so don't treat it like one. In your activities section, don't give them a cookie cutter list of job descriptions and responsibilities. This is another great opportunity to leverage the power of storytelling. For example, when discussing your experience as a CNA, talk about a memorable patient interaction, what you learned from it, and how it's going to make you a better physician. Tip number 6 is to apply early. The medical school application is what we call a rolling application, and what I mean by that is that medical schools extend acceptance offers continuously throughout the year as they receive applications. They don't wait until all of the applications have been submitted. They do it on this rolling basis. So by applying early, you're competing against fewer applicants for more available spots, but conversely, if you delay and apply later, you're competing against more applicants for fewer spots. Tip number 7 is the schools matter, and the first thing here is you need to apply to enough schools. So one thing that you'll hear is that there are more qualified applicants than available seats, and so even with stellar metrics and a well-written application, probability still plays an important role here. And to leverage that probability in your favor, you just need to apply to more schools. The recommendation for the number of schools that you should apply to is relatively arbitrary, but I personally wouldn't have felt comfortable with applying to less than 15 schools, and I actually ended up applying to 29 total. But in general, I would recommend applying to anywhere between 20 and 30 schools. Also, I would recommend applying to your in-state schools, and then for whatever schools that you apply to that are out of state, those should generally be private because out-of-state public schools are heavily going to favor their in-state residents. Tip number 8 is to get strong letters of recommendation, and this one may seem obvious, but it bears saying because it's a really important part of the application. Don't simply obtain letters to check the box and fulfill the requirement. If you don't feel like an individual can write you a strong, enthusiastic letter of recommendation, then you don't want that letter. A weak letter in some cases may be more harmful than not having that letter at all. And many schools do cap the number of letters that you can submit, so they all need to be very strong. So only reach out to those individuals that you know can write you a high caliber letter of recommendation. And it does take time to develop those relationships, so you need to start working on that early. Tip number 9 is to prepare for the interview. And this is another one that may seem obvious, but it's really important, so we need to talk about it. The interview is like a perfect storm of needing to stay calm so that you can perform well, mixed with anxiety because this is potentially the greatest inflection point in your life, determining whether or not you're going to be a doctor. No pressure. But one thing you can do to help alleviate this stress is to prepare. You can do this with mock interviews through your school. You could also ask friends and family members to help with this. That way you'll work out some of the kinks before the real deal. And then when it comes time to actually interview, do some research on the school that you'll be interviewing with. For my interviews, I always had a notepad in front of me with the school's mission statement, vision, and core values. It's also useful to have that notebook to take notes during the actual interview. And then I did have prepared answers for some common interview questions, such as what are your 3 greatest strengths and weaknesses. Preparing in this way will just give you a confidence boost going into the interview and will help ensure that everything goes smoothly. Tip number 10 is to be well-rounded. Many schools will tell you that they review your application holistically, although some schools I feel are better at following through with that than others. Here's the way that I want you to think about it. You need to be a well-rounded applicant because, as we've discussed, there are many crucial components to this application, and if you fall short in one area, you typically need to make up for it in another. For example, if you have a low GPA, you typically need a higher MCAT to make up for it, and vice versa. Having a well-rounded application will undoubtedly serve you well throughout this process. There you have it, my top 10 tips on how to get into medical school. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, comment below, or feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to help however I can.
So that was Josh's 10 tips on how to get into medical school. And of course, give this video a like, comment down below if you have any questions for him as well. Be sure to subscribe to my channel as well, as I'll be showing a little bit more about what I've been up to and what I've been doing after college. So I'll go ahead and see you all in the next one.